The rain had been falling for 6 hours straight over the outskirts of Philadelphia, the kind of slow October drizzle that soaked into coat collars without warning and turned the streetlights into hazy yellow smears along the cracked sidewalks. Inside the 24-hour convenience store on Baxter Avenue, the fluorescent bulbs buzzed softly above the aisles, flickering once every few minutes like they were tired of being awake. The floor near the door was wet from the shoes of the last few customers who had come in to buy cigarettes or cheap coffee before disappearing back into the dark. Dante Moretti stood 3 steps behind the small girl in the checkout line, holding a paper cup of black coffee that had already begun to cool in his hand. He was 37, tall, built, lean under a charcoal wool coat that had clearly been chosen for function more than show. He had driven back from Atlantic City alone that night, without his usual men, after closing a quiet piece of business that did not need witnesses. He was not supposed to stop anywhere. He had stopped only because the rain had grown worse, and because the exit sign for the store had glowed in that specific way tired men find hard to ignore. The little girl in front of him could not have been more than 6 years old. Her hair was a soft tangle of dirty blonde, clipped back on one side with a plastic butterfly that had lost part of a wing. Her coat was too thin for the weather. In her small hands, she held a loaf of bread, a carton of milk, and an old brown leather wallet that she was opening very carefully, as if the seams might tear if she pressed too hard. She was counting coins onto the counter in slow, serious rows: quarter, dime, nickel. The cashier, a heavy man with a gray mustache and tired eyes, watched her without helping. She dropped the wallet. Dante bent down at the same moment she did. His hand closed around the worn leather before she could reach it, and the instant his fingers felt the stitching along the edge, something inside his chest went still. The wallet was brown, almost black in places where the leather had darkened with age. Along one edge ran a thin line of red stitching, uneven in a way that no factory machine had ever produced. A small dark mark curled at the corner like a teardrop, the kind of scar left behind by a careless flame held too close. Dante's thumb found it without needing to look. He had made that mark himself when he was 12 years old, with a silver lighter he had stolen off his father's dresser. He opened the wallet a single inch. Inside, pressed into the leather by hand, were 2 small initials: M. Michael Moretti. Dante did not move for a long second. The store, the rain, the buzzing fluorescent light above him all seemed to slide a half step away. His lungs forgot their job. "Mister." The cashier's voice cut through from behind the counter. "You got some kind of business with that kid's wallet?" Dante lifted his head slowly. His face gave away nothing. "Just returning what she dropped," he said, voice quiet, even. He held the wallet out to the girl on his open palm, the way a man might offer something to a small, nervous animal. She took it carefully, then she looked up at him. Her eyes were pale blue, very clear, and they studied him without blinking. "You look at it like you know it," she said. Dante crouched down a little so he was closer to her height. The cashier had gone back to his register, uninterested once the threat had passed. "Did your mom tell you where she got this wallet?" he asked gently. The girl nodded, tucking the leather against her stomach with both hands. "Her big brother gave it to her," she said, "a long time ago. She says she keeps it in case he comes back." Dante did not trust his voice for a moment. He reached into his coat and slipped a 20 from an inner pocket, sliding it flat onto the counter beside the loaf of bread. "Let her get a few more things," he told the cashier, not looking at him. "Whatever she wants." The girl's eyes widened. "I don't know you," she said, polite, not afraid. "I know," Dante answered. "You don't have to." He straightened, gave her space, and waited until her small bag was packed. Outside, the wind had picked up and the rain had thickened into a mist that wet the windows in sheets. "It's dark out," Dante said quietly, holding the door for her. "Let me walk you home." The bell above the door jingled once as they stepped out together into the drizzle. Dante took the small paper bag from her hands without asking, and after a short hesitation, she let him have it. The street was almost empty. A single car hissed past through a puddle at the intersection, its taillights vanishing behind a curtain of rain. Dante slowed his pace so the girl would not have to hurry. She walked half a step ahead of him, her butterfly clip glinting faintly under each streetlight. The old wallet pressed tightly against her coat as if she were afraid it might try to leave her. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lily. That's a pretty name. Mommy picked it. Daddy wanted Elizabeth." Dante filed that quietly away. "How far do you live, Lily?" 4 blocks. "It's the building with the blue door. We live on the 2nd floor." She looked up at him, then quickly ahead again, as if she had rules about staring too long at strangers. "Mommy sent me because she said her head hurt and she couldn't go out tonight." "Does she send you often?" Only when Daddy isn't home. Daddy doesn't like her to go out without him. She kicked a small stone off the sidewalk. He gets home late. Sometimes he's loud when he comes home. Dante's jaw tightened. He kept his voice level. Loud how? Lily thought about it the way a child thinks about something she has thought about many times before. When Daddy comes home loud, she said, me and Mommy go to the bathroom and lock the door. Mommy says the lock is thick. Inside his coat pocket, Dante's right hand curled into a slow, deliberate fist. The cold air burned in his throat. He made himself breathe. They crossed an empty intersection. A traffic light blinked yellow above them, the rain streaking sideways through its glow. Lily glanced up at him again. Are you really her brother? She asked. Mommy said he had a scar on his eyebrow. Dante stopped walking. He turned his face toward the streetlight and pushed the wet hair back from his left temple. A thin, pale line ran across his brow, barely visible unless the light caught it just right. Like this one? He said. Lily tilted her small face up and studied him the way adults study documents in court. Then she nodded, very serious. Mommy said he got it falling off a bike when he was 10. 9, Dante said. Close. She smiled a little, as if she had caught an adult in a tiny lie and was pleased about it. Lily, he said, and his voice was softer now than he had used with anyone in a very long time. Is your mom's name Claire? Claire Hayes, Lily said. But before, she was Claire Moretti. She told me once, but she said not to say it to Daddy. Dante did not move for several seconds. The rain collected on the shoulders of his coat and ran down in small dark rivers. 22 years. 22 years of private investigators, of sealed adoption files, of dead-end addresses in 3 states. 22 years of searching for a name that had been erased before she had even learned how to write it. How did she lose him? He asked quietly. Did she ever tell you? Lily took a little breath, the way children do before reciting something important. Mommy said Grandma took her away when she was very little. Grandma changed their last name because somebody bad was looking for them. Then Grandma got sick and died. And Mommy was 11, and she lived in a lot of houses with people who weren't her family. She paused, frowning up at him. She said she didn't know how to find him because she didn't remember the right name anymore. The memory came to Dante without warning. He was 15 again, standing in a hallway smelling of gun oil and his mother's perfume, and his mother was pressing a small hand that did not belong to him into the hand of a woman he barely recognized. Take her. Go north. Change everything. I'll come when it's safe. Claire had been 6 years old. She had cried without making any sound, the way small children cry when they have already learned that sound is dangerous. His mother never came. 2 weeks later, his father was found in a car in Queens with 3 bullets in him, and everything the Moretti name had ever protected burned down in one night. Are you okay, mister? Dante looked down. Lily was watching him carefully, the wallet still pressed against her chest. I'm okay, he said. His voice came out rough. He cleared it. I'm okay, Lily. She seemed to accept that. She turned and pointed up the block at an old brick apartment building with a blue-painted door and a row of narrow windows on the 2nd floor. One of them glowed a dim yellow behind a thin curtain. A shadow passed behind it, small and slow. That's us, Lily said. Mommy's waiting. The blue door was heavier than Dante expected, its paint peeling near the handle. Inside, the hallway smelled of old carpet and somebody's dinner, and a single bulb hummed against a water-stained ceiling. Lily slipped out of his reach at the first landing and started up the stairs, the paper bag forgotten in his hands. Wait here, mister, she called back over her shoulder. I have to tell her first. Dante stopped at the bottom of the 2nd flight. He set the paper bag down against the railing, straightened his coat, and listened. He heard her small knuckles on a door. He heard a deadbolt, then a chain, then the soft creak of hinges that had not been oiled in years. He heard a woman's voice, low, cautious, tired. Lily? Baby, why are you so wet? Where's the milk? Mommy, there's a man. Silence. Then, what? Dante stepped up slowly, one stare at a time, the way a man approaches a deer in a clearing. Mommy, he knows your wallet. He walked with me because it was dark. Lily, go inside. Go inside right now. Dante reached the top of the stairs. The hallway light was brighter here, a bare bulb throwing everything into sharp white. He stopped a respectful distance from the doorway and let the woman in the door see him. She was thin. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a loose tie at the base of her neck, and she wore a heavy gray sweater with long sleeves pushed down to the very edge of her wrists. Even though the hallway and apartment were warm, her eyes were the same pale blue as the little girl's. They were his mother's eyes, almost exactly. Sir, she said. and her voice was steady in the way practiced voices are steady. "Thank you for walking my daughter home. I've got it from here." "Claire," he said. Her lips parted. Her hand tightened on the doorframe. "Lily, who is this?" she asked again, but softer now, and the steadiness in her voice had cracked somewhere underneath. Dante moved one step closer, so the hallway light fell fully across his face. He let her see the line of his jaw, the set of his shoulders, the thin, pale scar above his left brow. The grocery bag in her hand slipped free. A can of soup thumped on the carpet and rolled against her foot. She did not look down. "Claire Bear," he said quietly. "It's Danny." Her knees gave a small, silent buckle. She caught herself on the doorframe, one hand flat against the wood, and for several long seconds she did not breathe. Behind her, Lily stood very still in a pink t-shirt, holding the old wallet against her chest like a shield. "Danny?" Claire whispered. "Just his name. Nothing else." "Can I come in?" he asked. She nodded once, because her throat could not make a word. The apartment was small and clean in that way poor homes are clean when the woman of the house has decided that dignity will not leave along with everything else. A folded blanket on a worn brown couch, a cheap vase with no flowers, a child's drawing taped to the refrigerator, and under all of it, faint but unmistakable, the sharp, sterile scent of antiseptic cream, the kind sold in small tubes at the pharmacy. Claire closed the door behind him with both hands. When she turned back around, her sleeve slid a half-inch up her forearm, and Dante saw it. A band of yellowing bruise around her wrist, the shape of a hand. She pulled the sleeve down before she looked at him again. He pretended he had not seen. He told her about the store instead. The little girl at the counter, the coins on the glass, the wallet he had known the second his thumb found the burn. "I burned that corner," he said softly, with a lighter. "I was 12. Claire laughed once and it broke into a sob. She covered her mouth with her hand. "I tried to find you," she said. "I wrote letters. I wrote to every Moretti in the New York phone book when I was 18. Nobody answered. Nobody. They wouldn't have." He shook his head slowly. "Our name became dangerous, Claire. After Dad, people stopped admitting they knew us. Letters went in fires." She wiped her face with the inside of her wrist. "What do you do now, Danny?" He paused. His eyes flicked to Lily on the sofa, the wallet hugged tight against her ribs. "I run a family business," he said carefully. "Import, export. It's complicated." Claire looked at him a long moment and said nothing. Outside, below the window, a heavy car engine rolled up the curb and cut off. Claire went white. "Danny," she whispered, "you have to go. Now. Please." Claire moved faster than Dante had ever seen a frightened person move. She grabbed his sleeve and pulled him across the small living room, past the sofa where Lily sat frozen, into the narrow kitchen tucked behind the half wall. "Wait here," she whispered, her eyes huge. "Don't say anything. Don't make a sound. Please, Danny." He opened his mouth. "Please." He nodded once. She pressed the kitchen door almost closed, leaving a thin sliver he could see through, and hurried back out just as the key turned in the front lock. Richard Hayes walked in like a man who believed the room belonged to him. He was tall and clean-shaven, 32, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that cost more than the rent of the building. His dark hair was slicked back with something that caught the lamplight. He brought with him 2 smells, expensive cologne and whiskey, and the whiskey was winning. His eyes moved over the living room before he even put down his briefcase. They stopped on the coat rack. "Whose coat is that?" Claire had already picked up the can of soup from the floor. She straightened too quickly. "My cousin's. He stopped by earlier to drop off a box. He left it. I'll bring it down to him tomorrow." Richard smiled without his eyes. "Claire, look at me." She turned her face up. He stepped in close and took her chin between his thumb and forefinger, almost gently, and tilted her head slightly left, then right, the way a buyer inspects something at an auction. "You have that look again," he said softly. "The nervous one. I hate that look. I'm sorry." From the narrow gap in the kitchen door, Dante watched his own hand close into a fist so tight the knuckles went white. He did not move. He made himself into stone. Lily had slipped off the sofa without a sound. She was standing in the far corner of the living room now, the old wallet clutched against her stomach with both arms. Richard saw it. That ugly thing again? He let go of Claire's chin and crossed to the child in 3 strides. "I told you to throw it out last week. Daddy, it's Mommy's." He plucked it from her hands like a man taking a toy from a dog. He turned it once in the lamplight, curled his lip, and tossed it onto the floor between the sofa and the coffee table. Dante felt something move in his chest that was not anger anymore. It was colder than that. Richard turned back to Claire. "Baby." His voice went soft and warm, and the warmth was the worst part of it. "Dinner?" "Yes, honey." Claire's hands were already moving toward the kitchen. "I was just making it." She walked past him. Dante watched her body do something that told him more than any bruise could. She angled her shoulder. She tilted her hip away from him. Her whole frame pulled itself a quarter-inch smaller as it passed within reach of his hand. She had learned to walk through her own living room the way a soldier walks through a minefield. And Lily moved too. Without a word, without thinking, the little girl drifted 3 steps sideways until she was standing exactly between her father and her mother's path. 6 years old. Already a shield. Dante understood in that silent instant that she had stood there many, many times. Richard's phone buzzed in his inside pocket. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and his face sharpened. "I have to take this. Claire, keep it warm." He pushed open the sliding door to the small concrete balcony and stepped outside, drawing the door almost closed behind him. Cold October air and a breath of rain drifted in. Dante leaned his ear closer to the gap. Richard's voice, lower now, clipped. "Professional. Tell him yes, the Brighton warehouse. Friday at the latest. I know what Volkov wants. I know. I'll have the numbers clean by then." The name struck Dante like a dropped glass. Volkov. Viktor Volkov. The Russian. The one family in the Northeast that the Moretti name had never been able to bury, and the one man who had spent 20 years wishing Dante would bury himself. Dante's face went still in a way that his men had learned to be afraid of. Claire slipped into the kitchen so quietly he almost missed her. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was iron. "Go through the back stairwell, Danny. Now. I'll find you tomorrow. I promise." Dante pulled a blank white card from his inside pocket and pressed it into her palm. "Just a number. No name. Any time," he murmured. "Day or night. Any hour. Claire Bear. You call." Her fingers closed around it. He slipped out through the service door, down the dim back staircase, and into the alley behind the building. The rain had thickened into a proper fall. He stood across the street in the shadow of a dumpster and looked up at the second-floor window. Through the thin curtain, he saw Richard's silhouette raise a hand. He saw Claire's silhouette bow her head. Dante did not blink. He did not move. He stood in the rain and memorized the shape of that window, the way a man memorizes the face of someone he has promised to avenge. The black Lincoln was parked 2 blocks away, under a dead streetlight. Dante slid in behind the wheel without looking back, pulled the door shut, and sat for a full minute in the dark. His hair was wet. His coat was wet. His hands, resting on the steering wheel, were not shaking, and that was the part that frightened him. When he was angry in the ordinary way, he shook. When he was this far past angry, he went very still. He took out his phone and pressed a single contact. It rang once. "Boss." Sal Ricci's voice was always the same, whether it was 3 in the afternoon or 3 in the morning. Low, clipped, awake. "I need everything on a man named Richard Hayes," Dante said. "Philadelphia. Real estate. CEO, or calls himself one. I want it by sunrise." A short pause on the line. "Personal or business?" "Both." Another pause, longer this time. Sal had been with him 16 years. He did not ask twice. "I'll call you back." Dante set the phone on the passenger seat. He started the engine. He drove north through the rain and did not turn the radio on. By the time he reached the gates of the estate on Long Island, the sky in the east was beginning to soften toward gray. The house was dark except for the 2 lamps the staff left burning in the front hall. He walked through the long corridors without taking off his wet coat, past the closed doors of rooms he rarely used, and into the library at the back of the house. He poured 3 fingers of whiskey into a heavy glass. He did not drink it. He set it on the desk and sat in the leather chair behind it, and for the first time in many years, he let the memory come fully into the room. He was 15. His father had not come home for dinner. His mother had stopped pretending, somewhere around 11, that this was normal. At 2 in the morning the phone rang, and she answered it, and the sound that came out of her when she heard the voice on the other end was a sound Dante had never been able to forget. Claire had been 6. She had run into his room in her nightgown, too frightened to cry, and the 2 of them had crawled under his bed together because it was the only place small enough to feel like a wall. They had stayed there until almost dawn. When his mother finally came to get them, her face was the face of someone who had already decided a terrible thing. "Take her, go north, change everything. I'll come when it's safe." She had pressed Claire's small hand into the hand of her own mother, a thin woman with a sharp chin and frightened eyes, and she had not looked at Dante once, because if she had looked at him, she would not have been able to do it. They had gone out the back door before the sun came up. 2 weeks later, His father's body had been found in a car in Queens. His mother had stayed with Dante, because the old men of the family decided a boy of 15 could not be raised without the name, and Claire could be, and the name was what was dangerous. That logic had seemed practical to them. It had seemed practical to his mother, too, until the night she drank too much of the same whiskey sitting in front of him now, and told him she had made the wrong choice, and then never mentioned it again. Claire, at 11, dropped into the foster system of a different state, under a different last name, after her grandmother's heart gave out in a small apartment in Reading. 22 years of looking. He had paid investigators who had come back with nothing. He had written to churches and hospitals and clerks' offices. The trail had gone cold in 4 different directions, and all 4 of them were dead ends, because the trail had been built to be a dead end. The phone on the desk rang at 3:40. Dante picked it up on the first vibration. Talk. Sal's voice was careful. Richard Arthur Hayes, 32, CEO of Hayes Barrington Realty in Center City, Philadelphia. Clean on paper. Underneath, he's got 3 shell LLCs moving money in and out of accounts that all sit inside the Volkov network. It's sloppy for a laundryman. He thinks his lawyer protects him. Dante's jaw locked. Keep going. 2 domestic calls to 911 from the residents. 3 years ago and 18 months ago, both placed by the wife, both withdrawn inside 48 hours. No charges filed. 1 pediatric ER visit for the daughter, age 5 at the time. Stairway fall. Attending physician flagged it for review. Review went nowhere. The kid's name is Lily. Dante did not say anything. Sal waited. Boss, Sal said, quieter. If we touch Hayes, we touch Volkov. We are not ready for that war. The glass broke under Dante's hand before he knew he had closed his fist around it. Whiskey ran across the desk and over the edge onto the rug. He did not notice the cut along the meat of his thumb. He put hands on my sister, Dante said. And his voice was not loud, but it carried through the phone like a door slamming shut. He put hands on my niece. There is no, not ready, Sal. I know, boss. Dante closed his eyes. He made himself breathe. Rage was cheap. Rage was what had killed his father. A plan was what had kept the Moretti name alive for 20 years after. Get me 3 more days of watch on the apartment. Quiet. Nothing visible. And find me a clean channel to someone in the federal side who owes us. I'm going to want options. Yes, boss. He hung up. He wiped the blood off his thumb with a napkin and crossed the room to the small shelf behind the desk. From between 2 books, he pulled a single photograph in a tarnished silver frame. A little girl of 6, missing a front tooth, sitting on a porch step with a stuffed bear tucked under her arm. The last picture anyone had ever taken of his sister before his mother sent her away. He held it for a long time in the thin gray light. I'm not losing you again, Claire Bear, he whispered to the photograph. Not this time. The text came at 7:12 in the morning, from a number he did not recognize. Franklin Square Park, 10 o'clock. The swings by the fountain. Please come alone. See, Dante was already dressed. He had not slept. He deleted the message, memorized the number, and drove south before the morning traffic thickened. The park was almost empty at 10. It was a small city square with 2 cracked benches, a rusted chain-link fence, and a set of old swings that sighed when the wind moved them. The rain had stopped during the night and left the grass dark and the air cold and clean, the way air gets in Philadelphia when October is starting to remember winter. Claire was already there, sitting on the far bench with her hands in her sleeves. She wore the same gray sweater as the night before and a thin beige jacket that did nothing against the cold. On the swings, Lily was kicking her small legs back and forth, bundled in a pink knit hat that was too big for her. She saw Dante first and lifted one mittened hand in a half wave, then went back to swinging, 20 feet away. In sight. Claire had chosen the bench for exactly that. Dante sat down beside her without speaking. He set a paper cup of coffee into her hands. She took it in both palms. They were shaking. He waited. I don't know where to start, she said. Wherever you need to. She looked at the fountain. She did not look at him. I met him when I was 23. I was a waitress in a restaurant downtown. He came in 3 nights in a row and tipped like a man who wanted to be noticed. He was charming, Danny. You don't know him like he was then. He brought me flowers. He remembered things I told him. He was the first person in my whole life who made me feel like I had a place in a room. The coffee steamed up between her fingers. She did not drink it. We got married 4 years ago. Lily was almost 2. It started after a deal of his fell apart. He came home drunk. He grabbed my arm so hard I couldn't lift it for 3 days. In the morning he cried. He actually cried. He said it would never happen again. She exhaled slowly through her nose. It did. A small silence. The first time I called 911, I thought that was the end of it. 2 officers came. Richard walked out of the bedroom with his hair combed and his shirt buttoned and offered them coffee. He told them I had an anxiety disorder. He said it calmly, sadly, like a man who was used to apologizing for a sick wife. He had a note from a psychiatrist the next week. The psychiatrist is on his payroll. I was the one who came out of that week with a diagnosis. Danny, not him. Dante's jaw moved once. He said nothing. I tried to leave. Twice. Her voice was flat now, rehearsed. The voice of someone who had told this to herself in the dark so many times it had worn smooth. His lawyer is Marcus Barrington. His law school roommate is sitting as a family court judge 2 counties over. Richard told me to my face, "If you leave, I'll get full custody. I have judges in my pocket. You will never see Lily again." I believed him. I still believe him. She swallowed. I went to a shelter in Trenton. 36 hours. He found me in 36 hours, Danny. The taxi driver who was supposed to be with the shelter was one of his men. I never found out how long he'd had him placed there. Waiting, she finally lifted her eyes to his. And 2 weeks ago, he put a gun on the kitchen table, right next to the bread, and he said, "Claire, accidents happen in houses. Think carefully." Dante's hand, resting on the bench between them, closed very slowly into a fist. He uncurled it just as slowly. "I didn't have anyone, Danny." Her voice finally cracked, and the crack was worse than tears. No family, no money of my own, nowhere in the world to run. The only thing I had was that wallet. I kept carrying it because I thought if I stopped carrying it, it would mean I had stopped believing somebody was still out there. Dante reached across and took her hand. Her fingers were ice. "You have me now," he said. She let out a short, wet breath. She looked at him for a long time, longer than she had looked at him at the door the night before. "Danny," she said, "what exactly do you do? Really?" He did not answer right away. He watched Lily push off the ground on the swing. "Rise. Come back. Rise. Come back." "I run a family," he said finally. "An old one. The kind of family Richard thinks he's connected to through his friend Volkov. Except Richard is a clerk compared to the men I sit across from at dinner." He paused. "I'm the kind of man Richard should have been very afraid of the day he met you. He just doesn't know it yet." Claire's face went a shade paler. Her mouth opened, then closed. She did not look away. "Okay," she said quietly. That was all. He squeezed her hand. "Give me 3 days, Claire Bear. Pack 1 bag. 1. Anything you absolutely cannot replace. Don't tell him anything. Act exactly the way you always act. On the 3rd night, I'll come for you and Lily, and you will never spend another hour under that man's roof." She looked across the park at her daughter on the swings, and then she nodded. Once, weakly, but she nodded. 2 days later, the lobby of the Barrington Tower in Center City smelled of polished marble and money. Dante walked in alone, wearing a charcoal suit cut too well for the neighborhood, carrying nothing. No briefcase, no phone visible, no men trailing behind him. The 3 security officers at the desk glanced at him twice and then looked away, because men who carry nothing and walk like that are either nobody at all or somebody you do not want to have noticed you. He rode the elevator to the 23rd floor. Hayes Barrington Realty took the whole level. The reception desk was a long slab of white stone with a young woman behind it who had been trained to smile before she spoke. "Good morning. Do you have an appointment?" "No." Her smile dimmed half a degree. "Mr. Hayes is very busy today, sir. If you'd like to tell him his wife's cousin is here to see him." Dante's voice was quiet, polite, unhurried. "The name is James Moretti. From New York." She hesitated, picked up the phone, turned slightly away. She was back in 30 seconds. "He'll see you." End of the hall. Richard's corner office was glass on 2 sides, and the gray Philadelphia skyline filled both of them. Richard himself was behind a desk too large for him, leaning back in a high-backed chair with one ankle crossed over the other knee. There was a crystal tumbler of something amber at 11 in the morning. He smiled when Dante walked in. Smiled with his mouth only. "So you're the famous cousin. I was starting to think Claire made you up. She doesn't talk about family much. She has reasons." Dante did not wait to be invited. He pulled out the chair across from the desk and sat down in one smooth motion. He placed a plain brown envelope flat on the polished wood between them. Richard looked at it without reaching for it. "What's that?" "Open it." Richard's smile thinned, but his curiosity was bigger than his patience. He broke the seal with one finger and slid the contents partway out. 3 photographs. A medical intake form. Nothing more. The first photograph was a close-up of a woman's wrist, yellow and purple, a handprint preserved in bruise. The second was the same wrist, weeks later, faded to a sick green. The third was a small girl asleep in a hospital bed with a butterfly bandage on her temple. The medical form had Lily's name on it. Richard looked at all of it for several seconds. Then he did something that told Dante a great deal about him. He laughed. "What is this?" He leaned forward, grinning now, pushing the envelope back across the desk with one finger. "Blackmail? Really? Buddy? You picked the wrong lawyer's client to walk in on. I eat people like you for lunch. It isn't blackmail, Mr. Hayes." Dante's voice had not moved a note. "It's an invitation." "An invitation to what?" "To stop." Dante folded his hands on the desk. "Walk out of their lives. File for divorce. Sign whatever she wants you to sign. Do not fight for custody. Accept a reasonable settlement. In return, no one will ever hear about any of the things I already know about you. Not about the bruise, not about the stairs, not about where the money in your 3 shell companies actually comes from." The smile on Richard's face changed shape. "Get out of my office. I'll show myself out in a moment. Do you have any idea?" Richard said slowly, and he was no longer leaning back. "Who my friends are? In this city? Do you have the first goddamn idea?" Dante stood up. He buttoned his jacket with 2 fingers. He looked down at Richard across the desk for a long, calm second. "Do you, Mr. Hayes?" He turned and walked out without closing the door. Richard sat perfectly still for a full minute after the footsteps faded down the hall. Then he snatched the envelope off the desk, strode to the far wall, and slammed it into the wastebasket. 6 seconds later, he was on his knees, fishing it back out, breathing through his nose like a man climbing a hill. He went back to his desk. He picked up the phone. "Marcus, it's me. Drop what you're doing. I need everything on a James Moretti. New York. Now. Today. I don't care what it costs. And pull anything we have on Claire's family tree. Her mother, her grandmother, maiden names, everything. I want to know who just walked into my office." He listened for a moment. His knuckles whitened. "I don't care if the records are sealed, Marcus. Unseal them." He hung up. He stood at the window with his back to the room and stared at the gray river for a long time. Then he pulled out his personal phone and typed 3 lines to his wife. "Coming home early. Don't go anywhere. Don't take Lily anywhere." In the apartment above the blue door, Claire's phone lit up on the kitchen counter between the onions and the knife. She read the message twice. She set the knife down carefully, because her hand had started to shake and she did not trust herself with a blade. She looked at the clock. 12:46. At 4 o'clock, Richard parked his black sedan crookedly against the curb and did not bother to lock it. He walked up the stoop of the old brick building, without his briefcase, without his suit jacket, his tie pulled loose at the collar. His face was a shade of red that had nothing to do with the cold. He did not slam the front door. That was the part that frightened Claire most. When Richard came home loud, they went into the bathroom and locked it. When Richard came home quiet, there was no room in the house that would be enough. Claire was cutting an apple into small cubes for Lily's bowl when the key turned in the lock. She had not wanted to cook a real dinner. Her hands had not stopped shaking since the text message. Apples and crackers and a glass of warm milk were the most she could manage. Lily sat at the small table with her feet hooked around the legs of the chair, already watching the door. Richard closed it softly behind him. He set his keys on the hook. He did not say hello. "Lily," Claire said quietly, not turning around, "take your bowl into your room. Eat in your bed tonight. Close the door." Lily slid off the chair without a sound. She picked up her plastic bowl, walked past her father without looking at him, and disappeared down the short hallway. "Claire." Richard's voice was almost gentle. "Come here, Richard. Please, come here." He took her arm above the elbow, not hard enough yet to leave a mark, and walked her across the living room into the bedroom. The door clicked shut. Lily sat on the edge of her bed with the bowl untouched in her lap and listened. A murmur, a louder murmur. Then a question, very loud, repeated twice. "Who is James Moretti? Who the hell is he, Claire? Who is he?" "He's just a cousin." The slap was not loud the way slaps are in movies. It was a small, sharp crack, almost quiet, and somehow worse. Lily set the bowl on the floor. She slipped off the bed and moved on her socks down the hallway, past the bedroom door where her mother was crying in a way that was trying very hard not to be crying, and into the living room. The old brown wallet was on the coffee table where Claire had left it that morning. Lily opened it with both hands. The small white card was in the sleeve where her mother had hidden it, behind the photograph of the man in the chair and the serious boy. A phone number. She took the card and walked, still silent, into the small tiled bathroom at the end of the hall. She closed the door behind her and turned the little silver button on the knob. There was an old beige phone mounted on the wall beside the towel rack, Richard had taken away Claire's cell phone a year ago, and Lily did not have one of her own. But the wall phone was so old, he had forgotten about it entirely. Lily stood on her tiptoes, pressed the receiver to her ear, and dialed the number on the card very carefully, the way her mother had taught her to dial 911, one digit at a time. It rang once. "This is Dante, Uncle Danny." Her whisper was so small it almost was not a voice. "Daddy's hurting Mommy again." For a half-second there was absolutely nothing on the other end. Then she heard a chair scrape in fast footsteps and the sound of keys. "Lily." His voice was suddenly very close, very steady. "Baby, listen to me. Are you in the bathroom?" "Yes." "Is the door locked?" "Yes." "Good girl. You stay locked in there. You do not open that door for anybody but me. Not for Daddy. Do you understand? Not for anybody but your Uncle Danny. I'm coming right now." "Okay." Out in the hall, something heavy hit a wall. The receiver slipped out of Lily's hand and clattered against the tile. A fist hit the bathroom door. "Lily!" Richard's voice, wild now. "Lily, open this door. Open it right now." Lily scrambled backward until her shoulders hit the cold porcelain of the tub, and she put both hands over her mouth. Dante was already in the Lincoln before the phone cord had finished swinging. He took the bridge at 90. He did not slow for the toll. He pressed a single button on the dash. Sal, boss, 2 men, not more, the apartment above the blue door on Baxter. Now, on it, 43 minutes later, Dante came up the back stairwell 2 steps at a time. Sal and 2 of his men were already on the landing, silent, waiting. Sal met his eyes once. Dante did not stop. The apartment door was not locked. The living room was in pieces. The lamp was down. The coffee table was tipped. The old brown wallet lay face open on the floor, the small photograph fallen halfway out of its sleeve. Claire was crumpled against the base of the sofa, her lips split, her left eye darkening, one arm cradled against her stomach. She lifted her head when the door opened, and the sound she made when she saw him was not a word. Richard wheeled around from the hallway, breathing hard. "You?" His face went through 3 colors in 1 second. "You? What the hell are you doing in my house?" Dante did not answer. He crossed the room in 4 long strides, and on the 4th, he drove his right fist into the center of Richard's face. Richard went down like a dropped coat. Sal was already through the door. The 2 men behind him hauled Richard upright by the arms before he could crawl. Richard's nose was bleeding in a bright, thick line down the front of his expensive white shirt. He was trying to speak, and only making small, wet sounds. Dante turned his back on him. He went to his knees beside his sister. "It's over, Claire Bear." His voice cracked once, and he did not try to hide it. "It's over now. I have you." There was a small scrabble of footsteps, and then a warm little weight hit him from the side and held on with both arms. Lily had come out of the bathroom. She was pressed against his ribs with her face buried in his coat. "You came," she whispered into the wool. "You really came." Dante closed one arm around his niece and the other around his sister, and for the space of 3 heartbeats he was not a boss of anything. He was a 15-year-old boy under a bed again, and this time, the door did not open on anyone coming to take her away. He looked up, over their heads, at the man being held between Sal and his 2 soldiers. His eyes were the color of winter steel. "You're going to learn, Mr. Hayes," he said softly, "exactly who you just tried to threaten." Sal handled everything without being asked. Within 20 minutes, Claire and Lily were in the back of a second car with one of Dante's women, a former ER nurse named Teresa who worked for the family in the quiet way some people worked for the family. Teresa cleaned the split in Claire's lip and pressed a cold compress against her eye with a gentleness that made Claire start crying again. Not from pain, but from the shock of being touched kindly. Lily sat pressed against her mother's side the whole ride, the old brown wallet clutched in her lap, refusing to let it go even when Teresa tried to help her out of her coat. They were taken not to Long Island, but to a narrow brownstone off Rittenhouse Square that was registered under a shell company 3 steps removed from any name Dante used in public. 2 men stayed on the stoop, 2 more on the roof. Teresa drew a bath for Lily. The door was locked behind them with 3 separate bolts. Richard went somewhere else. The warehouse in the old rail yard outside the city had not been used for shipping in 15 years. Its concrete floor was stained. Its high windows were broken in the corners where pigeons had found their way in. A single work light on a stand threw a hard white circle into the middle of the room. In the circle was a wooden chair. In the chair was Richard Hayes. His wrists were zip-tied to the armrests, loose enough to hold him, tight enough to remind him. His nose had stopped bleeding, but the dried blood down his shirt looked almost black in the light. He had not been struck again since the apartment. Dante had given clear instructions. No marks, no hospital-quality injuries. Not yet. Dante sat across from him in an identical wooden chair, elbows on his knees, hands loose. He had taken off his coat. His shirt sleeves were rolled once, cleanly, to the forearm. "Richard," he said, "I gave you a chance, 2 days ago. In your office. You wasted it." Richard spat on the concrete between them. "You have no idea who I work with. Do you hear me? Whoever you are, whatever you think you are, Volkov will bury you in a hole so deep your mother won't find the edge." Dante tilted his head slightly. "Victor Volkov?" It was almost a smile. Almost. Richard's face changed in stages. The bravado slackened at the corners first, then the rage slid sideways out of his eyes and was replaced by something much older and much quieter. "How do you?" he said, and had to stop. "How do you know that name?" Dante leaned back in the chair. "My name isn't James. My name is Dante Moretti. Victor and I have some very old business that goes back a long time before you married my sister." The color left Richard's face in one long wave from forehead to chin. "No," he whispered. "No, no. You put hands on my sister, Richard. You put hands on my niece. You left bruises on a 6-year-old child and called it a fall down the stairs. Any other man sitting in the chair I'm sitting in would have killed you an hour ago." Dante's voice did not rise at all. "I want you to live. I want you to live because I want you to be awake for every minute of losing everything you built on her back." Sal stepped forward from the shadows and set a slim black tablet on Richard's lap, above the zip ties. Dante reached out and tapped the screen once. It lit up with documents, bank transfers in 6 figures, 3 different shell companies tracing into a single Cayman account, photographs of men in suits shaking hands outside a restaurant in Brighton Beach, annotations in a neat hand along the margins. "By 8 tomorrow morning," Dante said. "A copy of that package reaches a specific desk at the FBI field office in Philadelphia. Unless 4 things happen first." Richard's eyes were fixed on the screen. 1. You sign the divorce papers my lawyer is going to put in front of you. You waive custody. Entirely. Permanently. 2. You transfer $2 million into an irrevocable trust in Lily's name. 3. You write a signed confession, in your own handwriting, of every time you laid a hand on Claire. Dates. Details. Medical visits covered up. Everything. 4. You disappear. You leave the state. You never contact them again. Not a letter. Not a phone call. Not a drive-by of her building. Nothing. Richard was nodding before Dante had finished the 3rd point. "Yes. Yes. All of it. Yes." Dante nodded at Sal. Sal cut the zip ties. Richard stood up on legs that did not entirely work, nodding and nodding, saying yes like a word he could not stop saying. Dante's man walked him out toward a waiting car. Dante watched him go. Then he looked at Sal. Sal gave the smallest nod. The pin had gone into the lining of Richard's suit jacket during the ride out, a second piece of adhesive microphone under the collar, in case he changed coats. The apartment Richard stumbled into at 3 a.m. was empty and cold. The bedroom door stood open. Claire's clothes were gone from half the closet. Lily's stuffed bear was missing from the top of the dresser. Richard sat down on the edge of his own bed. He stared at the wall for a full minute. Then he pulled out a burner phone from a drawer and dialed a number he was not supposed to dial unless the building was on fire. It picked up on the 2nd ring. "Moretti found you?" The voice on the other end was ice and gravel and faint Russian. "You stupid fool. You brought a Moretti into my house? Victor, listen to me. You sit in that apartment. You do not move. You do not call anyone else. You do not sign anything. You wait." A short breath through the nose. The voice went colder. "We handle this my way now." The line went dead. 3 miles away, in a quiet back room of the brownstone off Rittenhouse Square, Dante was leaning over a laptop with a single earpiece in. Sal stood behind him. The call had come through clean. When the line clicked off, Dante did not move for a long moment. The small, tired edge of a smile that had been on his face when Richard had first gone pale in the warehouse was entirely gone. "Sal." "Yes, boss." "Wake everyone up." 3 days passed inside the brownstone off Rittenhouse Square, and for 3 days, nothing terrible happened. It was the strangest feeling either of them could remember. Claire slept the whole first night without waking. She did not realize this until she opened her eyes to the narrow bar of gray morning light coming through the heavy curtains, and understood that the last thing she remembered was closing her eyes. No listening for a key in the lock. No sitting up at 2 a.m. to check whether Lily's breathing was steady. Just sleep, clean and deep and dreamless. She lay very still in the bed for a long time, afraid that if she moved, She would find out she had imagined it. By the second morning, Lily had started laughing again. Small laughs at first, the kind that come out by accident and then get embarrassed. By the third morning, she was running in socked feet down the long hallway of the brownstone and sliding the last 3 yards into the kitchen where Teresa was making pancakes. Dante came by every day. He brought groceries the first afternoon, in paper bags from a market 2 neighborhoods over. He brought a stack of picture books and a box of crayons the second. On the third day, he brought a small square of origami paper in 8 different colors. "Watch," he said, sitting cross-legged with Lily on the living room floor. "My mom taught me this one. It's called a crane." Lily watched his big hands fold a small, bright square into something small and clean and alive. She held the finished crane in her palm like a creature. "Can I try?" "That's why I brought you so many." Claire stood in the doorway with a cup of tea, watching them. Lily's tongue was pressed into the corner of her mouth in concentration. Dante's voice was quieter with her than Claire had ever heard any man's voice with a child. Claire smiled, and was startled to realize her face did not remember how that felt. Lily looked up from her crooked crane. "Uncle Danny, are you really a bad guy? Like in the movies?" Dante did not answer right away. "I do bad things sometimes, Bunny," he said at last. "But not to people like you and your mom." Lily thought about that, her small brow pulled into a serious line. "Then you're a good guy who does bad things," she said. "That's different." Dante looked down at his own hands for a second. Then he smiled, a slow, tired smile that almost reached his eyes. "Yeah, Bunny," he said softly. "I'm going to try to be that." That night, after Lily had fallen asleep clutching a half-finished crane, Claire and Dante took 2 cups of coffee out onto the small iron balcony at the back of the brownstone. The air was sharp. The city lights glowed orange against a low, starless sky. "You're my brother," Claire said after a while. "I will love you no matter what you do." "I mean that, Danny." Dante did not look at her. He looked at the roofline of the building across the alley. "But," he said, "but I want Lily to have a different life than the one I grew up trying to find. I don't want her ever sitting under a bed wondering who is coming to take her away. I want her to have boring homework and a locker that sticks and fights with girls over seat partners. I want her to have a normal that I never had. She will." He said it like it was already true. "When this is finished, I'll set everything up clean. A new city, if you want. A new last name, if that makes you safer. A real school, a real pediatrician, piano lessons if she wants them. Every single thing Mom would have wanted for you, Claire. I'm going to put it under her." Claire was quiet. "Do you remember, Mom?" Every day, they stood there without speaking, 2 shapes side by side against the balcony rail, looking up at a piece of the night sky between 2 buildings. Down in the alley, 3 parked cars along. A black sedan sat with its engine off and its lights off. Inside it, a man in a dark jacket lowered a long lens from the balcony to his lap, scrolled once through the photos he had just taken, and sent them. Sal saw the flash. He had been watching the alley from the kitchen window with the lights off, as he had been every night, and he had seen the faint pale flicker between the second and third parked cars. It was not a streetlight. It was not a cigarette. He walked into the living room without hurrying and spoke quietly. "Boss, we've been made." Dante was already setting his coffee down. "How long?" "Minutes, not hours. Move them. Tonight. Safe House 3. Sal was on his phone before Dante finished the sentence. Teresa was waking Lily up. Claire was already pulling her bag off the chair by the door. It had been packed since the first night. The family moved like a single body that had practiced this before. 4 minutes later, Sal came back up the stairs, and something in his face was wrong. "What?" "Both tires on the lead car. Slashed. Clean cuts. Done in the last 15 minutes. Dante stood very still. They had not simply been watched. They had been prepared for. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Unknown number. He answered without speaking. A voice came through the line. Cold, accented, unhurried. "Dante, we need to talk." Dante walked into the small back study off the library and closed the door behind him before he spoke. "Victor." "Dante." The voice on the line was almost warm, the way very cold water can feel warm for a second before the skin understands. "You've been busy. So have you. Your man in the alley used a cheap lens. I will speak to him. Or perhaps I will not. He did his job. I have your attention. You have my attention." A soft breath on the other end, the sound of a cigar being rolled. "You touched my property, Dante. Richard Hayes belongs to me. You do not take things that belong to me. That is not something I can allow to go unanswered. Property?" Dante's voice stayed level. "He is my sister's husband. He has been breaking her arms for 4 years. He put bruises on a 6-year-old child. Don't call him property to me, Victor. A dry, almost amused laugh. Your house is not my business. What happens behind your sister's door is not my business. But Richard moves $200 million a year through American paper for me, clean and quiet, and that is very much my business. You understand the difference. Let him go. I'll find you somebody to replace him. Somebody better. Somebody not stupid. No. The word was soft. You will return Richard to me. Intact. You will walk away from your sister and her child and let this marriage continue the way it was. You will do this quietly, and we will have peace between our houses, the way we have had peace for 20 years. That is my offer, Dante. It is a generous one. Your father, if he were still alive, would tell you to take it. Dante closed his eyes. My father is dead, Victor, he said quietly, because he took a generous offer once. Dante, no. A pause. On the other end of the line, Dante heard the very small tap of ash falling into a tray. Then you know what happens next, Victor Volkov said. Dante did not answer. He ended the call. He came out of the study moving fast. Sal, Tony, everybody in the kitchen. Now. Within 90 seconds, 7 of his senior men were standing around the long kitchen island of the brownstone. Dante did not sit down. Volkov called. Our lease on peace is up. As of tonight, we are in active protection posture. 2 full teams on my sister and my niece. 24-hour rotation. They do not go anywhere without 4 men, and the 4 men do not all travel in the same vehicle. We move them to Safe House 3 inside the next 90 minutes. Sal was already pulling on his coat. Boss, there's a wrinkle. Say it. Lily has a pediatric appointment this morning, 8:30. It was set up through Teresa last week. Claire took her 20 minutes ago. It's the clinic on Spruce. We didn't change it because we didn't want to mark patterns. Dante swore under his breath. Take Marco and 2 more. Go. Now. Don't call ahead. I don't want the clinic staff on a phone anyone can hear. Sal was out the door. Dante did not go with him. While Sal was on the road, Dante drove in the opposite direction, to a diner on Ray Street, where a woman in a nondescript coat was already sitting in a booth at the back with a cup of coffee gone cold. Her name was Agent Diane Reyes, and she had been a mid-level federal agent for 9 years, and she and Dante had a history of exchanging very precise favors without ever being friends. He slid a flash drive across the table to her. Everything Hayes has moved through his shell companies in the last 4 years. Names, dates, account numbers, correspondence. All of it stands up. None of it came from you. She looked at the drive. She looked at him. What do you want in return, Moretti? Move on it fast. Get a warrant. Get him off the board before he becomes somebody else's problem. And when you do, remember that my name never appeared on any of this. Dante, is there something I should know is about to happen? He stood up and dropped a bill on the table. You should know that by tomorrow morning, you're going to be very glad you took that drive today. He was back in his car when he made the call. Claire, Danny. Her voice was careful. Lily was probably right next to her. Is everything okay? I need you to do exactly what I say and not ask questions. Are you still inside the clinic? In the waiting room. They're running late. Good. Stay inside. Do not go out to the car. Do not leave the building for any reason. Sal is on his way. You will know him. Big guy. Gray coat. He will come to you. You wait for Sal and nobody else. Tell me you understand. I understand. A small silence on her end. Is it bad? He almost said no. He did not. Just stay inside. Claire Bear. He took a breath. I love you, sis. It was the first time he had said it in 22 years. He had waited 22 years to say it, and he had waited because he had always thought there would be an easier day. I love you too, Danny. Her voice wavered. See you soon. Sal's SUV hit the clinic parking lot 14 minutes later. The sliding doors hissed open. The receptionist looked up, confused. Can I help the Hayes family? Mother and daughter? Appointment at 8:30. Where are they? The woman blinked. They were just here. They left about 10 minutes ago. The husband came in. He said it was an emergency. They went out the back with him. Sal did not answer her. He was already moving through the corridor at a hard run, one hand inside his coat. He pushed through the rear fire door into the employee parking lot. It was empty. 7 cars. No van. No people. He stood very still in the middle of the lot, breathing, scanning. At his feet, on the wet asphalt, in the yellow cone of the back door light, was a single small sock, pink, child-sized. It had not been dropped. It had been placed. Sal keyed his radio with a hand that shook once, and then went steady. Boss, they're gone. Richard, Volkov's men. We have a drop signal. Pink Sock, backlot, Spruce Street Clinic, 12 minutes, maximum. In the Lincoln, 2 miles across the city, Dante heard the words, and for one clean second, he did not breathe at all. Then he said 3 words into the radio, very quietly, and the entire Moretti family moved at once. Everyone, in, now. By the time Dante crossed the bridge back onto Long Island, his phone had rung 9 times, and he had answered none of them. The estate was already lit up when he drove through the gates. Every window, every outbuilding, cars he had not seen in his driveway in more than a year were parked along the curve of the gravel, doors already closed behind men moving fast under the motion lights. The underground garage beneath the east wing had been built to hold 20 vehicles. It was a long concrete room with harsh overhead strip lights and a concrete floor that echoed every footstep. Tonight, it held 50 men. They were not standing in rows. They were standing in the loose, silent shape that made men stand in when they did not yet know what they had been called for. Senior captains at the front, soldiers at the back. Sal beside the low concrete step at the end of the room. Tony on his left. Marco with a laptop already open on a folding table near the wall. Dante walked in still wearing his coat. He did not take it off. He stepped up onto the concrete step and did not wait for silence, because the silence was already there. 20 years ago, he said, and his voice carried without effort. I took this seat on one condition, that we do not touch civilians, that we do not start wars, that this family earns its bread like a business, not a circus. You all know that rule. Some of you have complained about that rule. You have kept it anyway, because it has kept us alive while other houses put their sons in the ground. He paused once. Tonight that rule bends. He let it settle for one beat. Viktor Volkov took my sister. He took my niece. They are 6 years old and 28 years old, and they are the blood of my mother, which makes them the blood of this family. You understand me. They are not civilians to us. Not tonight. 50 men did not move. Not a shift of a jacket. Not a cleared throat. Nobody in this room is being ordered into this. If your name doesn't walk out tonight, no mark against it. But the men who walk out behind me, and we walk back in with both of them. Or we don't walk back in at all. Nobody left. Sal, boss, you run the ground team. You pick your men. You pick your entry. You pick your line of retreat. I trust you inside of my own head. Done. Tony, boss, call the Romanos. Call the DeLucas. Ask them, personally, on my name, for 20 men and a covered dock for tonight only. We are not hiring. We are calling in old debts. Make it clear this is mine, not theirs. They do not get pulled into a war if they lend tonight. Tony nodded once and was already on the phone as he walked away. Marco, here, boss. Marco's fingers were already flying on the laptop. Port cameras. Industrial grid. Every warehouse Volkov touches through his front companies. Every white van on the east side of the city in the last 2 hours. I need a hit. Working. Less than 40 seconds passed. Dante was still standing on the step when Marco's head came up. Got one. The laptop swung around on the folding table. A grainy still image filled the screen. A white panel van, no plates on the front, pulling slowly through a chain-link gate under a faded blue sign. Brighton Wharf Holdings. Volkov's Paper Company. The warehouse is on the long pier. They came in at 9:17. That's him, Dante said quietly. His personal phone buzzed once in his coat pocket. He glanced at it. D. Reyes. He stepped off the concrete and answered. Dante. The FBI agent's voice was tight. We moved on the drive. Warrant for Richard Hayes signed 40 minutes ago. Agents hit his apartment and his office. He is in the wind. I am telling you this as a courtesy. Do not make me regret that. I know where he is. Dante, the port, Brighton Wharf, Pier 12. He is holding my sister and my niece at gunpoint. You can have him in 2 hours. Alive. Federal custody. With every name he has ever laundered for. Or you can spend the next 6 months chasing a body. Your choice, Diane. Dante. Do not. Proper channels, he said, calmly, are what let him hurt my sister for 4 years. I am done with proper channels tonight. Bring your people. Stage half a mile out. Do not move until you see my signal. And I promise you, you will have the arrests of your career before sunrise. He ended the call before she could answer. He went into the house through the side door. Up to the library. He knelt at the old safe behind the shelf. He opened it and took out one thing. A small, tarnished silver frame. A little girl of 6, with a missing front tooth and a stuffed bear under her arm, sitting on a porch step in a summer that did not exist anymore. He slid the frame into the inside pocket of his coat, over his heart. Sal was waiting at the garage door. Boss. His voice was lower than before. I have to say this once. If this goes sideways, if Volkov has the reach I think he has, this family could come apart tonight, permanently. Dante looked at him for a long moment. Sal, if I do not go get them out of that warehouse, I come apart tonight, and then there is no family left to protect. Sal held his eye, then he nodded, just once, and did not say anything else. 12 cars rolled out of the Moretti estate in a long dark line at 1:45. Headlights off on the drive, headlights on at the gate, engines in 4 different tones. A quiet wake of men who had not all ridden together since the funeral of Dante's father, 22 years before. They pointed south, toward Philadelphia, toward the port, toward the pier, Brighton Wharf, 2 o'clock in the morning. The warehouse was a long rectangular shell of corrugated steel at the end of Pier 12, its windows painted black from the inside. The air smelled of salt and diesel and cold rust. Somewhere out on the river, a bell buoy kept time with itself. The only light for 200 yards was a single caged bulb burning above a steel door on the land side. Inside, on the second floor of the old wharf office, in a narrow room that had once been a foreman's lunchroom, Claire sat on the concrete floor with her back against the wall and her daughter in her lap. Lily was crying, quietly, the way she had been taught to cry. Claire stroked her hair. Shh, baby, shh. Listen to Mommy, listen. Her own voice was not quite steady, but she had decided, somewhere in the back of the van, that Lily would not hear it break. Did I ever tell you about your grandfather? Lily shook her head against Claire's shoulder. His name was Michael Moretti. He was a very big man. His hands were this big. She held out her palm. He had a laugh that you could hear from 3 rooms away. When he laughed, the dishes would rattle. Lily gave a small, wet hiccup of interest. And when I was little as you, there was a boy who lived in the same house. A serious boy. He had a book in his hand every minute of the day. My daddy used to say the boy was going to read himself into a stone. Uncle Danny, Lily whispered. Uncle Danny. Claire kissed the top of her head. Every night, when the power went out on our street, and it went out a lot in those days, Uncle Danny would get a flashlight, and he would read to me until I fell asleep. He did the voices too. He was very serious about the voices. A small smile against her coat. Your grandfather said something once. He said that Morettis do not leave each other behind. He said it was the only rule that mattered, the one rule we never bent. She tilted Lily's chin up so the little girl was looking into her eyes. Uncle Danny is coming, baby. He knows the rule. He will come. On the land side of the pier, 800 yards out in the dark. Dante stood at the trunk of his Lincoln and listened to Sal's quiet briefing. 3 entry points. Roof access on the north side, service door to the west, main cargo bay on the east. 12 of Volkov's men visible on thermal, at least 4 more inside the office stack. Boss. Sal's voice was low and level. You cannot walk into that building. 2 lives. 1 wrong trigger and we are carrying one of them out wrapped in a tarp. Let me send the teams. I'm not going in with a gun. Dante shrugged off his coat and handed it to Sal. The tarnished silver frame inside the breast pocket made a soft square shape against Sal's palm. I'm going in with my head. Wait for my signal. Dante. Wait for my signal, Sal. He walked across the open asphalt of Pier 12 alone. He walked slowly, hands out from his sides, fingers spread. A thin, cold rain was starting up off the river. When he got to within 30 feet of the steel door, 2 men in black jackets stepped out from its shadow with rifles held low. Dante stopped and lifted his hands to his shoulders. Dante Moretti, here to see Victor. One of them spoke into a radio in Russian. The other walked up and patted him down. Nothing under the suit jacket, nothing at the ankle, clean. They took his belt. They waved him through. The main floor of the warehouse was a hollow cavern of shipping pallets stacked to the rafters. A cleared space had been made in the center, and in that space sat a battered leather armchair someone had dragged out of storage. In the armchair sat Viktor Volkov. He was smaller than most photographs suggested, 60 pounds of a 55-year-old man pressed into a tailored coat, with close-cropped gray hair and eyes the color of wet slate. A cigar burned in his left hand. A glass of something amber sat on a wooden crate beside him. Richard stood at his shoulder. Richard was grinning. Dante Moretti. Victor exhaled a slow plume of smoke. It has been a very long time. You look like your father, I have been told. Come closer. Let me see you. Victor gestured with the cigar. You walked a long way in a thin suit. I respect that. Your father would have respected it. Dante did not move closer than he had to. Let them go, Victor. Whatever you want from me, I'm standing here. Man to man. This does not need to involve a woman and a 6-year-old. Victor laughed softly. Dante, You insult me. You have just walked me my best piece of leverage through my own front door, and you want me to put it down? No, I do not think so. Then take me in their place. Trade. You put them in a car. You send them back to the city. I stay. I am, standing here, worth more to you than a sister who does not even know your name. Boss, don't listen to him, Richard started. Victor lifted one finger. Richard, shut up. The Russian studied Dante over the tip of the cigar for a long moment. The old man was thinking. Actually thinking. An interesting offer. He set the cigar in a tin lid on the crate. But I think I will keep all three. In Dante's ear, hidden behind the collar of his shirt, Sal's voice crackled twice, paused, then came through in a whisper. In position. North, west, east. Reyes is on the perimeter with 20 agents and a SWAT element. On your word, boss. Dante let the smallest breath out through his nose. He looked at Viktor Volkov. He almost smiled. Victor, he said softly, you are no longer in a position to negotiate. Outside, the world changed. Every floodlight mounted on every harbor crane within a quarter-mile of Pier 12 came on at once, turning the wet asphalt into a field of bleached white. A loudspeaker cracked the air from the landward end of the dock. Federal agents. This is the FBI. The warehouse is surrounded. Drop your weapons and come out with your hands visible. For half a second after the loudspeaker cracked open the night, nobody moved. Then Viktor Volkov was on his feet, the cigar forgotten, and he was speaking in Russian with the clipped speed of a man who had lived through this kind of moment before. Hold them. Fight. Do not let them take the women. Two of his soldiers raised rifles. One of them turned on Dante. Dante moved first. He was closer to the man than the man expected. He stepped inside the line of the barrel, drove the heel of his hand up under the shooter's chin, and twisted the rifle out of his grip as the man folded. A second rifle came up from the left. Dante shot once, low, into the man's thigh. He dropped. The warehouse erupted in overlapping gunfire from 4 directions as Sal's teams breached the 3 entry points at once. Dante did not stay to fight. He spun toward the back of the warehouse, where a metal staircase climbed to the second-floor office stack, because he had already seen Richard running up it. Richard took the stairs 3 at a time. He still had the small chrome pistol he had been slipped during the briefing, and the only plan left in his head was the plan men like him always reach for last. A hostage. He kicked the foreman's lunchroom door off its hinges. Claire was already on her feet, shielding Lily behind her with both arms. Lily's small fist was buried in her mother's sweater. In her other hand, against her chest, was the old brown wallet. Richard grabbed Claire by the hair and yanked her out into the narrow hallway that ran between the offices. He jammed the barrel of the pistol up under her jaw. You move, he panted at the empty corridor, and I kill her. Dante came around the corner at the end of the hallway with the rifle raised. The corridor was narrow, maybe 12 feet wide. 1 bare bulb, 2 men, 1 woman between them, a child pressed against her mother's hip. Dante stopped. Stay there. Moretti! Stay there! Richard's eyes were white all the way around. His hand was shaking. You take 1 more step and I kill this bitch right here in this hallway. I swear to God. Okay, Dante said. His voice was low, flat, the voice a man uses to talk a jumper down off a ledge. Okay, Richard. Easy, easy. I'm listening. Lower it. Lower the rifle. Lower it. Dante bent slowly at the knees. He laid the rifle on the concrete floor and slid it a foot away with the side of his shoe. He stood back up with his palms open. There. It's down. You're in charge. Talk to me. I am walking out of here. With her. She is coming with me. You are going to let me walk past you or I swear to God I will. Lily was looking at Dante. Not at her mother. Not at her father. At her uncle. Dante held her small pale eyes for a fraction of a second, and something passed between them without a word. Lily's hand moved. She pulled the old brown wallet out from against her chest. She cocked her little arm back the way a child cocks back a snowball. She threw it. It was not a hard throw. It was a 6-year-old's throw. But the wallet tumbled end over end across the short gap, and the cracked leather corner struck Richard squarely across the bridge of his broken nose. Richard yelped. His head jerked to the side. The pistol barrel came off Claire's jaw for half a heartbeat. That was all Dante needed. He was already moving before Richard's head started to turn. He closed the gap in 2 long strides, drove his right hand up under Richard's wrist, and forced the pistol toward the ceiling as his left arm hooked around Claire's waist and ripped her sideways out of Richard's grip. The gun fired once into the corrugated roof. Plaster rained. Claire stumbled into the wall with Lily clutched against her. Dante hit Richard full force. They went down together against the far wall of the corridor. Dante landed on top of him, got one knee into the middle of Richard's chest, and drove the pistol out of his hand with a short, controlled blow to the wrist. Richard gasped. Dante raised his fist. He did not bring it down. He held it there, inches above Richard's face, for a long second, while Richard stared up at him and understood, finally, what he had always been staring at. "You are not worth the blood on my knuckles," Dante said quietly. "The law gets the rest of you." Downstairs, the gunfire was already dying. Federal agents in dark vests were flooding in through the cargo bays, shouting orders in layered voices. Sal's men were already on the floor with their hands laced behind their heads, exactly as instructed. Viktor Volkov had made it 20 feet out a side door and no further. 2 FBI agents had him face down on the wet pier with his wrists behind his back. In the narrow hallway upstairs, Claire slid down the wall to her knees and pulled Lily into her. Dante came down off Richard and left him for the 2 agents pounding up the metal stairs. He went to his sister and his niece and he folded both of them into his chest and held on. "I promised," he said into Claire's hair, his voice breaking for the first time in 22 years. "I promised I would not lose you again." Lily looked up, her small face tear-streaked. "Uncle Danny," she whispered. "I hit him with the wallet." Dante laughed. It came out wet and broken and relieved all at once. "Bunny," he said, pressing his forehead to hers. "You are a real Moretti." Outside on the pier, in the cold white glare of harbor floodlights, federal agents were cuffing Richard Hayes and Viktor Volkov, 20 feet apart, at the same moment. Agent Diane Reyes stood at the edge of the cordon, coat collar up against the wind. She looked across the asphalt and caught Dante's eye through the open warehouse door. She did not speak. She gave him, just once, a single small nod. He returned it. When the sun finally began to come up over the river, it came up gray and pink and slow, the way Philadelphia sunrises always did in October. Dante, Claire, and Lily stood together in the blue light at the edge of Pier 12. A blanket an EMT had given them wrapped around all 3. At their feet, on the dusty concrete, lay the old brown wallet. Nobody picked it up yet. They stood there, and they let the sun touch their faces. And for the first time in a very long time, none of them were looking over a shoulder. 3 weeks later, the federal courthouse in downtown Philadelphia had never seen a press gallery so full. Richard Hayes was indicted on 14 counts: money laundering, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, assault with a deadly weapon, 4 counts of aggravated domestic violence, 3 of them involving a minor, 2 counts of witness tampering. The list was long and methodical, and each line had the weight of something Claire had carried alone for 4 years. Viktor Volkov was indicted separately on charges that filled 26 pages: international trafficking, aggravated kidnapping, RICO, 3 murder conspiracies from years the files had never been able to close before. The U.S. Attorney's Office sent their senior prosecutor for that one, and he read the indictment slowly, as if he had been waiting a long time to say each word out loud. Claire took the stand on a Thursday morning. She wore a plain dark blue dress with a modest collar. Her hair was pulled back. She had not put on makeup that morning except for a little under her eyes, and she had done that only because she had cried on the drive over. Dante sat in the first row, directly behind the prosecution table. He wore a charcoal suit and a tie and no jewelry. He did not look at Richard. He looked only at his sister. Lily sat beside her mother's empty seat at the witness rail, holding her grandmother's old wallet in her lap and holding Dante's hand with her other small hand. The prosecutor walked Claire through the timeline gently. The bruises, the calls to 911, the psychiatrist on Richard's payroll, the shelter, the taxi driver, the gun on the kitchen table. And then she was asked to speak in her own words. She took a slow breath. She looked out at the courtroom. She did not look at Richard, either. "For 4 years," she said, and her voice was quiet but it carried. "I thought I had no one. I thought silence was the price of my daughter's safety. I was wrong. Silence was the price of my freedom." The courtroom was very still. He told me I would never see her again if I spoke. He told me every judge in the city was his friend. I believed him. I was alone. I didn't have a family. I didn't have money. I didn't have any place in the world where he couldn't find me. So I stayed. And every year that I stayed, I taught my daughter a little more that a house is a place where you lock bathroom doors. Richard's lawyer tried. He tried to suggest that Claire was unstable, that her memory was unreliable, that her own diagnosis from Richard's psychiatrist supported a pattern of histrionic behavior, that the bruises could have had other causes. The prosecution answered with 3 years of photographs taken on a neighbor's phone at Claire's request, 18 months of text messages preserved by a family lawyer who had never been paid to file them. The voice recording Dante's microphone had captured a Volkov telling Richard to stay in the apartment and wait. The warehouse footage from the port. The medical files on Lily the hospital had finally released. The judge, under seal and with a child advocate present, accepted a short pre-recorded video statement from a child witness. Lily, sitting on Claire's couch, holding the wallet in her small hands, looked into the camera and spoke her own sentence without any adult prompting. "My daddy made my mommy cry a lot. He made me scared. I don't want to ever see him anymore." That was all she said. It was enough. Sentencing came the following week. Richard Arthur Hayes was sentenced to 35 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole for the first 20. His real estate company was placed under receivership. His 3 shell LLCs were dissolved. The $2 million he had been forced to transfer into Lily's trust was upheld by the court as a lawful settlement and protected. Viktor Volkov was sentenced to life in federal prison without parole. The divorce, already filed, was granted by the court on the same morning, without Richard's signature. Under the circumstances, a family court judge ruled he had forfeited all parental rights. Claire was awarded sole and permanent custody of Lily. As Richard was led from the defense table in cuffs, he turned his head and looked once at Dante across the gallery. His face was hollow. His suit did not fit him anymore. He leaned forward against the arm of the marshal holding him, and he mouthed 3 words, low enough that only Dante could read them. "This isn't over, Moretti." Dante watched him. He did not rise. He did not raise his voice. He only leaned slightly forward on the bench and answered, quietly enough that only Richard could see his lips. "It is for you." The marshals took him away. Claire found Dante on the courthouse steps afterward. The air was cold and clear. Reporters were still shouting from behind a line of officers at the bottom of the stairs. Lily stood between them in a small wool coat, holding the old brown wallet under one arm. Claire did not say anything for a long time. Then she said, simply, "Danny." "Thank you." Dante shook his head once. "Claire Bear," he said, and his voice was rough. "You don't owe me thanks for something I should have done 22 years ago." She reached for his hand. He took it. The 3 of them walked down the long marble steps together, slowly, Lily between them. One small hand in her mother's, one small hand in her uncle's. At the bottom of the stairs, Lily looked up at them both. "Are we going home now?" Claire looked at Dante. Dante looked at Claire. "Yeah, Bunny," he said softly. "We're going home. Viktor Volkov may have been locked away for life, but the machine he had built did not stop running the day the cell door closed." His nephew Dmitry Volkov was a man of 31, with an engineering degree and a temper he had inherited from no one. Within a week of his uncle's sentencing, Dmitry stood in the back room of a club in Brighton Beach and swore, in front of 7 older men he had promoted overnight, that the Moretti name would pay in full. The attack started quietly, a small Italian restaurant in Queens. One of the legitimate ones the Moretti family had put their name on years ago, caught fire at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. No one was inside. The arson investigator found a pour pattern along the back door. 2 weeks later, a foreman at a Moretti-owned construction site in New Jersey was followed home by 2 men in a black car who waited until he was in his own driveway before rolling down the window and showing him a photograph of his daughter's elementary school. He did not sleep that night. None of them slept that night. Dante called a family meeting at the estate on Long Island. 31 men filled the long dining room. Captains, senior advisors, a few old men who had sat in that same room when Dante's father had been alive. The mood was dark and loud and familiar in a way Dante did not like. Sal spoke first, because Sal always spoke first when things were hard. "Boss, if we do not answer this, every family on the coast is going to read it the same way, that we are weak, that we let a sitting capo burn our buildings and frighten our people, and we did nothing. We lose a generation of respect overnight." A dozen voices muttered agreement. Dante let them finish. Then he stood up and walked to the head of the table and put both hands flat on the wood. And he said nothing for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower than any of them had expected. "My father died in a war between families. He was 39 years old." The room went quiet. "My mother died in silence, running from that same war, in a walk-up apartment outside Reading, alone, because the war had taken everything else. My sister was 11 when she buried my mother. She was 28 when I found her again. She almost died, 3 weeks ago, because I could not get clear of that war fast enough to protect her from it." He looked slowly around the table. "I will not let that war become the inheritance of a 6-year-old child who learned this year that her last name has another version of it." He took a breath. "I am pulling this family out. 2 years, fully and cleanly. Every illegal line of work this house is still involved in will be closed, handed off, or wound down before the end of the next fiscal quarter. The Moretti name, from today forward, means something different. The pushback came in a wave. Old men pounded the table. A younger captain stood up and accused him of throwing away a legacy. One of his father's oldest advisors said he would not be lectured by a boy. Dante let all of it pass. He did not raise his voice. I am not forcing any of you. Anyone who wants to stay on the old road is free to walk out that door tonight with my blessing and my silence. Nothing will ever come at you from my direction. But the Moretti house, as of this moment, is no longer in that business. Half the men stood up. They shook his hand, some warmly, some coldly, and they walked out into the night to find other families. Half stayed seated. Sal did not move. I serve you, boss, he said simply. Not the work. Over the next 6 months, Dante did what he had told the room he would do. He converted 3 buildings in Brooklyn into a chain of family restaurants run by the widows and children of men the family had lost over the years. He folded the old construction arm into a fully legitimate firm. He endowed a charitable foundation in his mother's name, quietly, dedicated to survivors of domestic violence and the children who grew up inside it. And Dmitry Volkov, deprived of the large, visible Moretti targets he had been planning to attack for months, began making clumsier and clumsier moves against smaller rivals, until the FBI, using a single, clean, anonymous tip that had arrived in a plain envelope on Agent Reyes's desk, arrested him on a rooftop in Coney Island 6 months after his uncle's sentencing. The sun was going down over the water when Dante walked out onto the balcony of the Long Island estate. The breeze off the Sound was cold. The sky was the color of an old peach. His phone rang in his pocket. He looked at the screen. He smiled. Claire Bear, Danny. Her voice on the other end was light in a way it had not been, for all the years he had not known her. Lily is asking when you are coming for dinner. She says you promised to teach her how to fold a frog next. She has been using up my printer paper. Dante laughed once, a real laugh, from the chest. Tell her I am on my way. If this story has touched your heart, here is what it wants to leave with you. Family is not always the people who share your address or your name on paper. Sometimes family is the person who never stops looking, even when the trail has gone cold for 22 years. Silence is rarely the price of safety. Most of the time, silence is the price of someone else's control, and the smallest hand in the room, a child with a worn old wallet, can change a fate that adults have accepted for years. If this story moved you, please take a moment to hit the like button, share it with someone you think needs to hear it tonight, and subscribe to our channel so you do not miss the stories we release every week. We would love to hear from you in the comments below. Has a story like this ever touched your own life? Do you know someone who is still waiting for the person who is still looking for them? Tell us, honestly and from the heart. We read every comment. Take good care of yourselves. Take care of the people you love. We wish every single person watching this a peaceful day, good health, a calm heart, and a home that feels like home. We will see you in the next video. Goodbye, and thank you for listening.